So this video is about racism in Los Angeles. It's about being black in Los Angeles and the racism that you experience. I crossed paths with a gentleman who was an IT professional, and he told me that when he entered a building that a white gentleman who was looking for the IT professional passed this guy a couple of times because he had, basically the white guy had a different idea of who the IT professional was. He wasn't expecting a black man. And so this black man relayed this story to me, and he said, you know, that's racism. And I just looked at him and told him, brother, I understand. Okay, I've had plenty of experiences around the world, okay, similar to those. And so his story sort of precipitated, you know, the creation of this video, or at least I'm using it to segue into my own stories, because I was thinking about racism in Los Angeles while reading City of Quartz, this book by Mike Davis, excuse me. He wrote it in the 1990s, I believe. And yeah, he's talking about the myriad ways that you know, America, or Los Angeles in particular, has either developed or has changed, and how it's been portrayed in the movies. And he's also talking about, you know, the reality, the demographics. And he's not, you know, he's a historian, so he's laying it all out there. And, you know, part of the story is racism. And he plainly says, yes, there's racism, there's lots of it. So this is how I'm going to segue into my personal experience and my understanding of racism. And I'm going to talk about my experience as a consumer, you know. But what I'm going to share is not limited to my experience in Los Angeles, but it's also, you know, indicative of what has happened to me around the world. All right, so basically here it is. As a black man, when I approach a counter at a store, especially a fast food establishment, I expect, right? It's happened to me so often that I expect it now. Okay, but of course, when I stepped to the counter initially, it wasn't something that I expected, which I'll tell you in a moment. But these days I expect it because it's happened to me so often. When I approach the counter, I'm told to wait. Okay, you may think, oh, they were just busy at that time, but no. You see, the way that I rationalize this, the way that I try to justify what's happening is, yes, the workers are busy, and yes, they need to take breaks, or they need to slow down the flow of traffic, so to speak, or the flow of the customers. And so they would rather inconvenience a black person, in this case me. They would rather inconvenience me by telling me wait, rather than do that to a white person. So if a white person were to approach the counter, they would say, how may I help you? Hi, you know, I'm very, they're going to bring their A game. But then if a black person approaches, they're going to tell them, wait, I'm still working on the order for these white folks, kind of thing. They're not going to say that, but it's going to be that kind of thing where I'm still working on that person's order before you. Before I, you know, give my attention to you, I have to do something. I'm not ready for you. And so that's been my experience. I've had that experience here. Most recently, I went to the local fish restaurant in downtown Los Angeles, and, you know, as I approached the counter, of course, because I've expected this, I've taken a very calm approach to my approach to the counter. And so I'm not in a rush. I'm never in a rush because I know they're going to tell me, wait. All right. And so as I approached the front of the line, and I was the next customer in line, even before rushing to the counter, even before approaching the counter, the gentleman finishes with that customer and he tells me, wait. And I'm like, here it is again. Now, this is not something that I'm imagining, because here I have an anecdote for you that occurred, halfway around the globe. And it didn't even happen to me. It actually happened to another colleague of mine whom I was with. Okay? But here, let me explain. All right, we're halfway around the globe. We're in the Middle Eastern country of Bahrain. I'm at a coffee shop with my Filipino colleague. All right. I probably shouldn't have told you, his country of origin or his ethnic makeup until at the end of the story to let you, think about it. But the cat's out of the bag, so let's just continue. My colleague is Filipino origin. He's American, however, a Filipino American. All right. He speaks full Tagalog. There I was in the coffee shop seated. I was seated and I was not near my colleague at all. Okay. Well, my colleague had approached the counter because he was going to order coffee. And behind the counter, working at this cafe, were, my colleagues, fellow countrymen. These were Filipino workers. All right. And so anyhow, there was a white woman who entered the restaurant. Now, entered the cafe. Now, I presume my colleague was standing at the front of the counter and maybe looking at the menu, trying to decide what he was going to order. And while thinking, no one approached him or no one asked him, sir, what would you like? But in comes this white woman, and immediately the Filipino staff's attention, goes to this white woman to serve her, because this other Filipino dude couldn't possibly, be there to be served as a customer. No, he's just like the rest of the Filipinos who work there and what have you. And so they turned their attention and shifted to her, and then they asked her what she would like, and she proceeds to place the order, and my Filipino American colleague cuts them off and says, no, what are you doing? Wait, I'm standing in line. I'm literally standing right here in front of you, and you shifted your attention to this white woman, completely shifted it to her, and never asked me what I wanted. So he continued. He began to berate and chastise these people in Tagalog. Okay, to tell him, what the hell is wrong with you? You look at a brown man and you think he doesn't deserve to be served. You don't even ask him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he basically had a full-on assault of these racial prejudices, and he fought against it because these were his countrymen who he identified that instant. He identified that prejudice in. That was his experience. So what I'm just telling you here is my experience has been, when I approach the counter, I'm going to get a wait, just a moment. I'm sorry. Excuse me. We're busy. Just wait, and it's such an annoying thing because it's like, no, you're not that busy. Okay. You're just taking it upon yourself to put me in my place, to tell me, okay, you're not as important, that sort of thing. And No, that's not my place. That's not my place. I don't, you know, I don't have to sit and wait, you know. And so that's been my experience. And yeah, so that's my experience with racism. Um, it's happened all around the globe, but it's also um, it damn near happens all the time in Los Angeles. You approach the counter and they tell you to wait. You know. Um, Here's another thing. Here's another aspect of racism that may or may not go. You know, it may go unnoticed, or it may not be noticed. Um, Security guards, the security staff. Now this security guards are usually black. Yes, you can find security guards who are not black, or who are Asian, Latino, or whatever, but oftentimes, I'll say this, before you find a black person working in a business in a particular strip mall, you will find a black person working as a security guard. It's easier to find black people working as security guards than it is to find people working inside of the companies that they are securing. I'll say that. I'd have to look at the demographics. I'd have to look at the labor statistics to get an in-depth, statistical, proof of this. But empirical evidence really does say a lot. You can walk around, you can drive around and enter different, strip malls. You can enter the mall, a regular mall. You can enter a mall and you can see, who is securing these places. What's the thing with having big black guys as bouncers outside of the clubs? Okay, how many clubs have you been to where there have been big black guys outside? Now, of course, yeah, it makes sense. Okay, they're big, they're intimidating. Okay, fine, all right, but I'm sure those guys don't dream of securing businesses and throwing people out and things of that nature. I don't think so, but whatever. So those are a few moments of racism and prejudice and discrimination and things like that I've experienced here in Los Angeles, and as well as a couple of anecdotes about international experiences. Yeah, so LA is it's interesting. It's interesting. One more thing, right here in our community, the change in demographics here in our community, you get an idea. The people that you live around, they have a certain approach to life. For instance, I've noticed this recently. If I'm walking in my community and I'm walking on the sidewalk, it takes a lot out of me to go off of the footpath and enter the area of the sidewalk where there's grass. It takes a lot, and I probably would jump over the grass, because there's that whole idea, don't step on my grass, that's ingrained in me, whether it is, whether it's come from, a white person saying it, or whether it's come from a black person. It's just, I know to respect someone's property. Well, specifically tonight, I happened to notice that there was a woman in our community who was walking down the street, and She was clearly walking all on our grass, all on it. And I think she was making a point to say, hey, I'm going to do this in response to something that we did. In response to something that we did. Our car was parked such that the car blocked the sidewalk. Now, this was illegal. This is illegal in Los Angeles. You cannot obstruct the sidewalk. Now, it was our fault. Completely own up to that. And after I noticed that the car had been parked, that we had forgotten about it, we moved it. Okay, we rectified the situation. I personally moved the vehicle. But here's the thing. In the kitchen, while I was in the kitchen and I was eating and I noticed what was happening, I didn't immediately jump up out. As I was eating, I didn't just jump up and go and move the car. But I noticed a few people. For some reason, there were a lot of people walking today. Well, I noticed the first gentleman was a black man, and he walked on the sidewalk, and eventually he walked around our car. And I think he thought, I could tell by his mannerisms that he was annoyed by the situation, like, couldn't have moved your car, man, come on. And shortly after he passed, there was a white couple, and that they walked, and they had their dog, and you could see physically that the white guy was upset. Oh, who the heck is gonna leave their car here like this? Oh, these guys, asshole, whatever. And so, but they walked around the vehicle just the same. Now, like I said, there were a lot of people walking, which was very odd. We didn't expect there to be people, which is another reason why we probably forgot about the vehicle, just like in a rush to do what we were doing. And luckily, I was able to observe this in a very short amount of time. As I was eating, I saw, these people coming, and I'm like, man, a lot of people. I didn't know if they were trying to make a point or something, like, hey, we noticed your car parked illegally. We want to make, I don't know. So lastly, the last person, before I got up and changed and moved the car, I noticed another woman walking down alone. I actually saw her twice. She was walking up the hill. She walked around the vehicle. And then as she was walking past our home, she walked all along the grass. All on the grass. And I looked and I thought, that's odd that she would just walk on the grass. But I noticed that she continued past our home and she walked along our neighbor's grass as well. So I just thought, okay, well, that's kind of odd, but I guess she's just walking on the grass. She just preferred to walk on the grass for some reason. But then I noticed that she was walking down. So she went to the top. Okay, she went to the end of the block, and then she turned around and walked back. And as she's walking back, she was still walking on the grass. And then she came to the car and walked around the car. And I just thought, that's odd. Because I know for a fact, for myself, I would never walk on anyone's grass, out of respect for that other person, period. I mean, it's a conscious thing that I'm doing to say I'm not going to do that. So for her, was it just as conscious of her to say, I am going to do it? I am going to show you that if you park in the driveway and you don't care for the pedestrians, that I'm not going to care for your property? Was that what she was saying? So anyway, a little passive aggressive, type of stuff going on. But after I noticed that, after I finished eating and everything, I got up and I moved the car, and I wanted to wait and sit and wait for those people to go back, to come back across, but I didn't have enough, couldn't wait that long. They didn't pass in like 5 minutes or something like that, so I just let it go. But certainly, you know, sits on my mental, on my psyche. I wonder about that kind of stuff. Peace.